Israel and Iran held distinct strategic positions on the geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East, but the recent clashes between Israel and Hamas have shifted the world's attention. The escalation of violence in Gaza coincided with discrete movements in Tehran, weapon supply, logistical support, and timely official statements, suggesting a plot that goes beyond mere retaliation. Journalistic narratives and international analysts observe that Iran may be monetizing its regional influence without taking direct leadership, creating an ideal environment for hidden interests to thrive. At the same time, in Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and European capitals, reports emerge about quiet agreements, new alliances aimed at reshaping the global stage. In this context, the Book of Ezekiel, especially the prophecy of Gog and Magog, returns to the spotlight in theological and strategic circles. How do the current Middle East conflicts connect to an ancient prophecy and to hidden interests that may be behind global surveillance? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube show the videos to more people and allowing me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get into the video. It all began with a sudden offensive. Missiles tore through Gaza's skies toward Israel, and the response came within minutes. Images of destruction dominated the news, but behind the smoke screen, there was a much more calculated movement than it appeared. As soon as the attacks began, those who study the Middle East turned their eyes not only to the visible protagonists, but to those who remained strategically silent, Iran. Iran's involvement is not exactly new, but what intrigues is the way it manifests. There are no troops crossing borders, but there is clear evidence of logistical support, military training, and the delivery of sophisticated weaponry. Recent reports, including from Israeli and American sources, point to routes through Syria and Lebanon, with Iranian technology reaching Hamas fighters without leaving direct traces. Like a hidden conductor, Tehran orchestrates its influence from a distance. At the same time, Iran insists on maintaining a high-toned political discourse, supporting the right to resistance, while denying any direct action. This ambiguity is not just rhetoric, it is strategic. It allows the regime to keep moving its pieces, testing the limits of international response, without exposing itself to harsher sanctions or a direct war with Israel. And in this game, every move is meticulously calculated. On the Israeli side, the response goes beyond missiles. The real battlefield is becoming digital and algorithmic. New technologies are being applied in real time to identify targets, track communications, and most importantly, collect data. The recently revealed Lavender system exemplifies this. It cross-references information from thousands of profiles to automate who should be considered a threat. War is now filtered through artificial intelligence. According to sources within the Israeli military itself, these decisions can be made in minutes, based on data not always reviewed by humans. Civilians are placed on lists based on criteria like location, communication frequency, or suspicious ties, often without clear evidence. This raises an uncomfortable question. Where does efficiency end and irreversible error begin? International organizations have already expressed concern over the increasing use of these tools. War serves as fertile ground to test systems that, in another context, would never be publicly accepted. We're talking about semi-autonomous drones, facial tracking systems, and devices that intercept mass communications. And what if all this is being normalized under the excuse of national defense? At this point, Iran's role returns to the spotlight. While Israel deploys never-before-seen technologies, Iran observes and measures every global reaction. Silence is not omission, it's strategic analysis. The absence of direct action allows the country to maintain command over its regional allies while remaining free to negotiate with larger powers. It's as if chaos were part of a much broader plan. And it's not just regional politics at stake. With each new attack, opportunities arise for silent pacts between nations that once opposed each other. Some international analysts are beginning to identify a subtle shift in alliances, fueled by shared interests in defense, energy, and surveillance. The conflict thus becomes a showcase for the strengthening of strategic blocs under new rules. What we are witnessing may be more than a local war. It may be an experiment in global reconfiguration, where each act of violence serves as a trigger to justify new control mechanisms. The pieces are moving not only in the Middle East, but also in distant capitals where decisions are made behind closed doors. And in this new game, not everything is visible. Gaza was the beginning, but what comes next? Iran's silence, Israel's surveillance, the underground agreements, could they all be connected as part of a much larger plan? Those watching the conflict from the outside usually see only bombs and fiery speeches. But if you look closer, you'll notice something that repeats with mathematical precision. Every time a new clash begins, certain industries experience a surge in revenue. It's not a coincidence. It's calculation. War, in this case, is not just a dispute over territory or ideology. It's also a business. And those who understand this business get ahead of it. Defense companies increase their contracts. Manufacturers of drones, surveillance software, and weaponry see their products being tested in the real field, then marketed to the world. This happens every time there's a clash in Gaza. What seems like improvisation is actually a technological showcase. A missile used today can be sold tomorrow as combat proven. The label is destruction. The marketing is war. What makes it even more complex is that the most valuable tools aren't always weapons. They're data systems. Platforms that track communications, cross-reference profiles, and identify faces in the chaos. These technologies, created to neutralize threats, now have a global market hungry for surveillance. And when a technology is successfully used to identify and eliminate an enemy, it instantly gains value for governments facing their own internal battles. This is where the line between security and control begins to blur. Some of these tools, like systems that suggest targets based on algorithms, operate with speed and precision, but they also make mistakes. And when they do, it's always the civilian who pays the price. Still, they continue to be sold, refined, and reused. After all, what matters to the market isn't ethics, it's technical performance. Data becomes more valuable than doubt, and the cycle continues. Each attack, each new operation, fuels an economic chain that goes far beyond the region. Investment funds, international stock markets, allied governments, all benefit, directly or indirectly, from the ongoing conflict. When there's a truce, there's silence. When there's blood, there are contracts. And this isn't a theory. It's a machine that's been running for decades, but now more visible than ever. The narrator continues, pointing out that even reconstruction is part of the game. The same powers that supply weapons later offer resources to rebuild what was destroyed. Infrastructure, hospitals, housing, everything becomes an opportunity for companies operating in conflict zones. Va destroys. Profit rebuilds. And the cycle feeds itself. Those who live in the middle of it see no end. Those who profit never see a crisis. Meanwhile, the technology developed in the heat of combat expands. Companies showcase their systems at international fairs, highlighting their real-world use in war zones. It's a war that, beyond being territorial, has also become a display, a real-time catalog. And the world watches, sometimes a little too eagerly. And when these systems reach other countries, the logic repeats. Authoritarian regimes purchase solutions used in the Middle East to control their own dissidents. War stops being an isolated event and becomes a laboratory for exporting control. What works in Gaza can work in any capital where dissent is inconvenient. In the end, is all of this really just a consequence of war? Or is it possible that, at some level, the conflict itself is sustained precisely because some profit too much to allow it to end? That's the question no one answers directly, but it reveals itself with every new offensive, every new contract, every new technology deployed in the field. And with that, when we talk about war, we're not just talking about gunfire and explosions. We're talking about markets, interests, billion-dollar profits that depend on instability as a business model. And that changes everything. If there's one thing history teaches us, it's that wars aren't won by weapons alone. They're won behind the scenes. And that's where this story gets even more interesting. While the world focuses on images of bombings and fiery speeches, the real strategic moves happen far from the cameras, in quiet agreements, unthinkable alliances, and conversations where yesterday's enemy becomes tomorrow's partner. Since the beginning of the new escalation between Israel and Hamas, many things have started shifting in diplomatic backchannels. Countries that barely spoke are now meeting frequently. Former rivals have begun to see the advantage of sitting at the same table. And all of this not out of ideology, but out of calculation. In times of crisis, interests speak louder than speeches. And those who understand this early on gain the upper hand. What few realize is that this war has opened a rare window to reposition pieces on the global chessboard. Chaos serves as a smokescreen. While the world focuses on the attacks, strategic deals begin to take shape. Some involve the exchange of military intelligence. Others, access to energy, trade routes, or even silent non-aggression pacts. And it's in this silence that the big decisions are being made. Take Israel as an example. Even under international criticism, the country has drawn closer to unlikely allies, not necessarily out of sympathy, but out of convenience. The region's instability creates fertile ground for tactical alliances. Those who once condemned now engage. Those who once avoided contact now seek it, because everyone has realized one thing: surviving in this new scenario requires more than strength. It requires adaptation. And on the other side, Iran isn't standing still. While projecting its influence through support to allied groups, it maintains active diplomatic channels with powers that, not long ago, kept it isolated. Russia, China, and even some European nations are beginning to reconsider their strategies. They see that with the balance of power shifting, keeping dialogue open with Tehran may be more useful than ignoring it. And this subtle rapprochement changes everything. This is where the war stops being a mere local conflict and becomes a catalyst for global redesign. The emerging new order isn't born from formal treaties, but from silent agreements stitched together in the shadows. And these agreements almost always involve exchanges that aren't made in the public eye. Exchanges that, if revealed, would completely alter our understanding of the sides in this conflict. Because the truth is this: public discourse doesn't always reflect what's happening behind the scenes. Many countries that condemn Israel's actions continue doing business with Israeli companies. And the same goes for Iran's allies. What is said in front of the cameras is just one piece of the game. The rest happens away from microphones. At this point, the conflict becomes almost a bargaining chip, and allies are chosen not for morality, but for opportunity. This brings us to an unsettling question. Could part of this war exist precisely to allow for these realignments? Could it be that by keeping the Middle East in constant instability, certain international actors ensure the ideal environment to forge new alliances without facing public resistance? Because in the midst of chaos, controversial decisions are easier to justify. In the end, what's at stake goes far beyond Gaza, Hamas, or Iran. What's being stitched together, quietly and strategically, is a new map of influence. And those who don't adapt, who fail to align in time, risk being left behind. Because when the enemy becomes an ally, and the ally becomes a pawn, the game is no longer just military, it becomes geopolitical. And the players, even the ones who seem like enemies, are sometimes playing on the same side. Who is in control of these alliances, and what is the ultimate goal behind this silent dance between adversaries? The answer may be hidden precisely where no one wants to look, behind the scenes. There's something many analysts have been ignoring, but it lies at the root of how certain groups view what's happening in the Middle East. We're not just talking about geopolitics. We're talking about narrative, about an ancient story that still influences real-world decisions today. The current war between Israel and its enemies has, for some, an ancestral name: Gog and Magog. Those who have heard of this prophecy know the weight it carries. In the book of Ezekiel, written thousands of years ago, there is a description of a final attack against Israel, coming from the north, led by a coalition of nations. And while many people see it as pure allegory, it's impossible to ignore the parallels with today's scenario. Iran appears as the direct heir of ancient Persia, one of the names mentioned in the biblical text. Is it just a coincidence? The moment Israel finds itself surrounded by armed groups, all with some connection to Tehran, this interpretation gains a new layer. And more than that, religious, military, and political leaders on both sides acknowledge the reference, even if they don't say it out loud. Some believe they are living the prophecy. Others are using the prophecy as a tool for mobilization. And that changes everything. Because when a war is no longer seen as merely political and starts being perceived as part of a greater plan, it gains an aura of inevitability. It becomes acceptable, justifiable. Each bomb, each attack, starts to seem like just another step toward an ending that was already written. But is it truly being followed by faith or by strategy? That's the most delicate part. Many current speeches, even from within the Israeli government, already allude to the fulfillment of prophecies. And this religious language, when it enters the military field, becomes fuel. Armed groups on the other side also use these texts. And suddenly, we have two sides preparing for total conflict, both believing they are doing exactly what was prophesied. Now think with me, what if this prophecy, far from being just a prediction, is being used as a script? Not something that fulfills itself naturally, but as a kind of instruction manual. After all, if you know what is supposed to happen, you can act to make it happen. And in this context, any military move can be seen as the fulfillment of destiny, when in fact it's just calculation. What's interesting is that this kind of narrative also helps justify unpopular decisions. Extreme surveillance, alliances with former enemies, territorial expansion, all of it can be justified if seen as part of a holy war. The people accept it because they believe they're living in the end times. Resistance weakens, and the state gains a blank check to do whatever it wants. And if that sounds exaggerated, just remember how many times throughout history prophecies were used as political tools. The difference now is that we have technology, real-time data, and a global mobilization capacity like never before. Prophecy meets the digital age, and the result is a war that seems spiritual but functions like a highly organized machine. The public is pushed to the extremes. On one side, those who see the conflict as a test of faith. On the other, those who believe it's all manipulation. But what if it's both at the same time? What if faith is being quietly exploited to validate very concrete strategic interests? In the end, what we have is a modern conflict shaped by an ancient text. But between belief and interest, between faith and power, who's really driving this narrative? Are the leaders merely responding to destiny, or using destiny as a shield to carry out their own plans? And what if the question isn't whether we're living the prophecy, but who stands to gain by believing it's happening? Every major geopolitical movement has, at its core, a player who prefers to act in silence. In the current conflict, that role belongs to Iran. While the entire world reacts to missiles launched from Gaza and Israel's offensives, Tehran observes, moves its pieces carefully, and maintains an ambiguous narrative. Support for the resistance, but without direct involvement. Yet anyone closely following this story knows that this silent posture does not mean neutrality. It means calculation. Iran has already realized that to maintain its influence in the Middle East, it doesn't need to go to war. It simply needs to fuel the right conflict at the right moment. This logic becomes clear when looking at its support structure for Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah. Funding, training, and arming are Tehran's currencies of influence. All done with care, to leave no concrete evidence. Iran plays a long-term chess game, and every move is designed to destabilize without exposure. But there's one piece in this game that completely changes the rules: Iran's nuclear program. And here, the stakes rise dramatically. What was once a technical issue, uranium enrichment, UN inspections, economic sanctions, now connects directly to the climate of war. The more unstable the surrounding environment, the harder it is to monitor or contain that progress. And that's exactly what seems to be happening. In recent years, Iran has accelerated its pace. Today, it has mastered the process of uranium enrichment to levels very close to what's needed to produce a nuclear weapon. And it does so while fueling conflicts that divert international attention. Every time a new attack occurs in Gaza or southern Lebanon, the spotlight shifts. And what happens inside the labs at Natanz or Fordow simply fades from view. This raises a suspicion that goes beyond diplomacy. Could Iran be using these conflicts as a smokescreen to advance its nuclear program uninterrupted? And if so, how far has that strategy already succeeded? The fact is, while global leaders attempt to broker truces and ceasefires, Tehran's atomic infrastructure continues to evolve. And with each new step, the room for negotiation narrows. Now think about how this fits into the larger board. If Iran truly reaches the capability to produce a warhead, it changes the entire regional dynamic. Israel has already made it clear that it will not accept that possibility, and that places the Middle East on the brink of a direct confrontation of proportions we've never seen. Could that be the ultimate goal? To generate enough tension to redefine the balance of power with a single card? The atom? What's most curious is that Iran doesn't even need to declare it has the bomb. It only needs to maintain the doubt. That ambiguity alone already has an impact. The potential threat serves as deterrence, as a bargaining chip in negotiations, as a way to keep allies close and enemies alert. And all of this without firing a single missile. It's an invisible war where fear does the heavy lifting. Meanwhile, countries that once pressured Tehran are stepping back. Some are seeking trade agreements. Others are trying to keep channels open to avoid losing influence. And Iran, once again, benefits from the confusion. In the midst of instability, it repositions itself as a power, not only militarily, but as the center of a new type of regional leadership, one that operates in the shadows yet defines the course of history. That's why viewing Iran merely as a financier of armed groups is to underestimate the real role it plays. It's not just interested in winning battles. It's interested in shaping the future of the Middle East, whether through conventional weapons, ideological influence, or, if necessary, nuclear deterrence. There's something happening behind this conflict that few people are paying attention to. While the whole world debates who's right, who started it, who will retaliate, a structure is being quietly, discreetly, yet effectively built. It's not a military base. It's not an arsenal. It's something much more enduring, the control system. Let's be direct. The war in Gaza served as a showcase for a new generation of surveillance technologies. Israel, under the justification of self-protection, has deployed systems that map every step, every face, every digital interaction. But the real issue isn't internal use. It's what comes next. Because once this technology proves it works, it starts being offered to the world. And that's where the danger begins to escalate. The argument is seductive. It worked against terrorists, it can work against internal threats in your country too. But that logic is slippery, because the definition of threat changes very quickly when tracking technology is in the hands of governments with no commitment to freedom. What was meant to fight an enemy begins to be used against protesters, whistleblowers, those who think differently. And this isn't a prediction. It's already happening. Contracts are being signed, platforms are being replicated, AI systems born in war zones are now being applied in urban centers. Software that analyzes behavioral patterns on social networks to predict and prevent possible civil unrest. A kind of invisible, automated censorship, hard to challenge because it operates in silence before the act even takes place. And the most insidious part of it all is that it comes wrapped as progress, as innovation. Look how much safer we are now. But at what cost? Because once you normalize this level of surveillance, there's no going back. The state of exception becomes routine. And the war that started far away, in Gaza, suddenly arrives in your neighborhood. Not with bombs, but with cameras, with algorithms, with automated suspicion. War is no longer just in the streets. Now it enters the screens, the phone, the email, the gaze of the camera that recognizes your face in the crowd, all in the name of security. But since when did security become synonymous with absolute control? And here comes the question no one wants to answer. Is this system being expanded because it's effective, or because it serves something much greater? Because when a government realizes it can control an entire population without raising a single weapon, only with technology, why would it ever give that up? This is called power, and the conflict in the Middle East has become the ideal testing ground. A war that justifies any experiment, any legal exception, any invasion of privacy, all with a seal of legitimacy because it's in the name of peace. The new Babylon is being built, only this time not with stones but with data, not with armies but with surveillance. A digital tower where everything is seen, everything is recorded, everything is archived. And when everything can be watched, what's left of freedom? Could it be that what we're witnessing now isn't just another phase of war, but the birth of a new global system, where security is used as an excuse to monitor everyone, all the time? What we see in the Middle East today is not just another chapter of war. It's a point of convergence between politics, religion, technology, and power. Every observed movement, from unexpected alliances to surveillance technologies, from prophetic interpretations to Iran's silent strategies, seems not to be happening in isolation, but as part of a larger structure. A scenario where current conflicts serve as tools not only to reshape borders, but to redefine the very mechanisms of control and influence. This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think too, subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.